Okay, we're nearly there. Selection of individuals with larger brain. It's not enough to have extra brain. It's not even enough to have extra analysis of information. It's got to be useful at the time to the individual. Remember Darwin's statement. You have an evolutionary niche. There are genetic inheritable changes giving individuals an advantage so they survive better than others. The environment's got to be there, the opportunity's got to be there before the genetic change happens. That's classic evolution. So why were individuals with larger brains selected? Why did they survive better than people with smaller brains? And we're talking 200,000 years ago, and that becomes difficult. Okay, so here's the first possible argument. Here's a magazine that I found a few years ago. You read the magazine, this magazine will make you smarter. This is before, and this is after. Well, you know, that can't be true. I mean, brains inside our skull, although I'll show you at the end of this talk that the brain does change in size by very tiny amounts, simply as a result of things like reading or playing computer games or whatever, but not quite like that. But what this captures is the notion that big brains must be cleverer than small brains. Well, yes, and everybody has to say that because, you know, it is, as I said, metabolically so expensive to have a big brain. There's got to be an advantage, and the only thing the brain does is to compute things and be intelligent and control behavior. So a big brain must do that better than a small brain. That has to be the argument, but it does get a little more complicated in the detail. And it's also slightly worrying because all of the cognitive scientists have tried for a very long time, for 50 years, to define what it is that's special about human intelligence. And all sorts of possibilities were put forward, you know, recursive thinking structures and the ability to understand other people and their minds and their thoughts and their plans, the ability to deceive and to lie, moral codes, altruism, when it pays off eventually. You know, all those kinds of arguments have been put forward as being exclusively special human characteristics. Virtually all of them have been shown to exist in some form or another in other species. I'll show you just two examples. In birds, where the brain is very much smaller than a human brain, but some bird species are incredibly clever. This is work done in Nikki Clayton's lab in Cambridge. And she looked at deceit. Now, human beings can be very clever at knowing that they're going to have an advantage by tricking others, deliberately setting out to deceive them, which requires a kind of two levels of cognitive judgment, not just to know that doing something is going to be beneficial to you, but knowing that stopping other people knowing that you're doing it will be even more beneficial to you. And birds can do that. So this is work on scrubjays, and scrubjays are species that hide food. Thousands of morsels of food hidden around for when food is scarce, and they go back and they find the food that they've hidden. They're caching birds. They hide their food. All right. Now, this experiment involves putting one scrubjay into an enclosure with lots of stacks of food, and it's on pebbles or leaves or sand or whatever, so lots of places to hide the food. And the bird will busily go around putting this particular nut there, and, you know, this cherry there, whatever, you know, hiding them away. However, you can be, and that's this result here is when it's doing it in private. You can also put a glass screen up and put another scrubjay on the other side watching it. Okay, it can't get to it directly, but it can watch what it's doing. And this is the result. What she's plotted here is the proportion of food morsels that were re-hidden in a different place when the other bird wasn't watching. So the bird happily hides the thing here, yes, it's here, waits until the other bird isn't watching, then sneakily puts it somewhere else. Okay, it's deceiving it. Right? So this is the proportion, and what you see is that when the bird outside watching it is a dominant bird in the same social group, a dominant bird, you know, a bully, if you like, it re-caches a lot. It sneakily hides a lot. When it's a subordinate bird that's not likely to try to intervene, isn't brave enough to try to steal the food, it re-caches a lot less. When it's the partner, of the bird, the mate of the bird, it recaches much less, and this is the control in private. So scrubjays deceive other scrubjays. This is even in some ways even nicer. This is an experimental, if you like, recreation of Aesop's tale of fable of the crow and the pitcher. You remember the story, the fable? The fable was that the crow came along very thirsty, found a pitcher of water, but the water level was too low for the crow to get its beak in to suck the water, right? So what it did was to drop stones into the water until the water level rose up. So it knew sort of basic physics, right? Well, do birds know basic physics? And the answer is they do. They did exactly the experiment with crows. So they set a cylinder with a mealworm, tasty morsel for a crow, a mealworm floating on the surface of water in a glass chamber. And put this on a windowsill in a region with a group of crows in the area, who very soon learned to come, sit on the windowsill, and there was a stack of stones. And very, very quickly, the crows put the stones inside the tube, and the water level rose, and the crow stole the mealworm. Right. This shows the succession of trials, from the first trial through to whatever this is, the 20th trial, for one crow. And they had two different sorts of stones, small stones and bigger stones, right? Two distinct sizes. The small stones are shown in the light grey, big stones, dark grey. So in the first trial, the bird picked up a small stone, a big stone, a small stone, a big stone, a big stone. Bingo, the mealworm was available, right? Raised it up. And so on, you go down. What you see is that very quickly, it's using pretty much only large stones. So it's learning the large ones raise the water level more quickly than the small ones do. So just amazingly intelligent behavior. So one after another, we've had to abandon the apparent uniqueness of a lot of aspects of human cognitive behavior, except syntactically based language. I mean, I don't know what you feel about the results on the ape gestural language studies, but I'm certainly not convinced, and I don't think the majority of cognitive scientists are convinced that they really demonstrate fully structured, recursive, syntactically based language. They demonstrate very skilled learning, sequence learning, symbol learning, but not the redeployment of symbols in different combinations to give different meaning, which is what language is, human language is. So that does seem to be special. I think what most people then would settle on is saying, well, it's the array of highly developed, high-level cognitive functions, which is special about humans. Not any one of them, but just the fact that we have all of them, and we have them in a very rich diversity. So, in particular, humans have a capacity to reflect, think about what's happened, and then to anticipate the future. Sometimes. So this varies between people. This is the picture I plucked off the web, and it shows some workmen here who've been spending all day installing these metal posts in the ground. That made a very nice job of that. And the reason for putting the metal posts in is to stop people parking. Okay, so sometimes you remember, it's their car. Sometimes people aren't that good at predicting their future, but in general, that's what we do. We think about the past, assess what's happened, and calculate the probabilities of what's going to happen in the future. We're very good at anticipation, and undoubtedly that's part of the story.